Good evening and welcome to another episode of Territories Talk. I am your co-host, Shaina Archer from the beautiful Virgin Islands, saying welcome back. We had a very nice long summer break, but we missed you guys as much as I know you missed us because I've been getting texts, asking, when are you going to be back? So we are back tonight and we are kicking it off in grand style with the Women in Leadership. And I have two very dynamic guests tonight that I'm looking forward to having a discussion with. My co-hosts, they're going to be joining us a little later on. Before we go any further, I want to say thank you to all our media partners across the region, Bermuda Channel 82, Virgin Islands CBN Radio, FM 90.9, TCI Radio, TCI, FM 89.1, Saba Radio, PJFE, FM 93.9, Montserrat Radio, ZJB, big shout out, Cayman Marl Road, Facebook page, and Barbados, Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation, Channel 8. Thank you guys for coming on board and embracing the vision of informing and uniting our region, because we have, countries on there that are not a part of the British OT. So we are very happy for that. So we're going to ask our viewers as you log in, share the link. Also, the usual, we're doing roll call. Let us know where you're viewing from. And as we go on in the show, feel free to pose questions and comments to our guests. All right. So without any further ado, I am going to ask my guests to introduce themselves, starting with Miss Tull.
Hi, thank you, Shaina. So I'm currently a junior at the University of Toronto and University College London. I'm studying international relations, public policy, and political science. I'm a first-generation university student, so education is a real privilege, and I feel really blessed to wake up every day and be a student. Outside of academics, I'm one of the 4 female co-founders of Bermuda Youth Connect. Bermuda Youth Connect is an organization that was founded in 2020 during our snap election in Bermuda. And it was in response to a really big civic gap. We were petitioning for a debate unsuccessfully. So we had like a pre-election forum and a youth forum. So that's where we are now. And the idea of us being all women, it kind of just came that way. Like that's how the cards fell, but it wasn't intentional. But things always work out the way that they should. So we're happy that it did.
Awesome. And for our radio's listeners, make sure you give them your full name. So, because you didn't introduce yourself, you actually just...
Oh, right. I'm sure it's all. No worries.
Yeah. So we have to remember, we have some persons that are watching us. They're going to be watching live or hearing the replay on the radio. So ever so often, I'm going to make sure I introduce and let persons know who our lovely guests are tonight, so that the next time they will log in and actually watch it. And that's the plan. All right. Ms. Robinson-Pickering, welcome to the Territory Talk.
Thank you, Shaina. Yes, so my name is Omonike Robinson-Pickering. I was born and raised in Trinidad, but I'm currently living in the British Virgin Islands. I am a lawyer. I'm a partner at the law firm Walkers, which is an international law firm headquartered in Cayman Islands. And I'm really looking forward to tonight's show.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you guys for accepting. So in the tradition of women in leadership, we always start off talking about sharing more with our listeners, because one of the things, in case this is the first time anyone is listening to this, the whole impetus behind of women in leadership was to, again, highlight what we would think of as a regular woman. Sometimes we think of it as being, politicians, we think of as those are the leaders, but there are some of us that are in there in our community, in business, wherever we find ourselves, that we are basically blazing trails, and we feel that they need that recognition. So with that, we started at least once a quarter showcasing, women leaders from across the region. So we've already been at this for about a year, and it has had a very exciting response. So I'm very glad that you guys are now a part of that, and I hope our discussion tonight, inspires old and young alike in terms of, what leadership is and how they themselves can contribute to the development of their community. So starting off, let's talk about, in terms of your careers, you guys have touched on it, in terms of what you're currently doing. And what have been some of your, I guess, the highlights we'll start with those, and then you could probably touch on the challenges along the way. Omonike, you talk about being a partner at Walkers. I can only imagine that has been a journey
Yes,
in
absolutely.
terms of how that came about. So share with us in terms of, is it that you started off in Trinidad wanting to be a partner or?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm still not sure. So my journey was a very interesting one. First of all, I never intended to do law. I actually studied the sciences, biology, chemistry, and maths. My father is a doctor, and so I thought I would follow in his footsteps. My mother's a lawyer, however, and after my first year at university, I realized that what I was pursuing wasn't fulfilling. I was at the University of Cave Hill in University of West Indies in Cave Hill, and I decided to see if I could switch to law with some prodding from my mother. Did law, and then went on to. I was ill for a bit, so I took a bit of a break. But as I mentioned before, my father is from the British Virgin Islands, so I got the opportunity to start working at Walkers here after doing an internship at Walkers, and I started here in May 2009. And I have not left. I was quite blessed to have the opportunity to do various secondments with Walkers, and I think that's what has allowed me to have such a long and interesting career. So I've been seconded to their Cayman office, their Hong Kong office, their Singapore office, and I think all of those things made the experience of practicing law very dynamic. I'm not sure. I sometimes wonder whether if I had stayed in the British Virgin Islands for the duration of my career, whether I might have ended up switching to something else. But I was so distracted exploring all these different countries, and also getting to meet other people and different types of practitioners and doing different types of law, that in the end, the 13 years passed quickly, and here we are. So to answer your very first question, I never intended to be a partner. That was not my goal. I thought that I might practice for a very short time and then go on to something else. But I was lucky. People saw things in me that I didn't necessarily identify in myself, and they pushed me. And we'll come on to talk about that in a little later. I think they pushed me, and I'm grateful for that. And here we are. So I've been a partner now going on 2 years. This month, October, will be 2 years.
Okay.
And I'm really enjoying it.
Awesome. So you basically became partner just before the pandemic started.
I became partner during the pandemic. Actually,
Wow.
it was one of the most. It was a very frightening experience, if I'm to be fair, because you're going through and you know that the opportunity is coming, but you're pretty isolated, and you don't necessarily have the support system that you would ordinarily have in the office, being around the people that you normally are. And then they delay the process, and then you're just thinking, you start thinking, oh, it's never gonna happen.
Yeah.
But it happened, and it was October 2020. So 2 years. So during the pandemic and my first few months of being a partner, I was at home. But now we're back in the office, and it's been really an amazing experience.
That's awesome. Well, I guess that might have been your biggest challenge then in terms of career to date.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think even preparing the application to become a partner, going through that process, and then, and another thing that I think a lot of female leaders might identify with is imposter syndrome. Having imposter syndrome and thinking, I'm not good enough. Why do you want me? I'm not sure that this is for me. I experienced all of those things. So it was one of those instances where I really had to dig deep, call on my spiritual beliefs, and then also call on my support system to say, look, to remind me that, no, you belong here and you deserve to be here. So yes, it not only was it challenging, but it was definitely one of those situations where I grew. And I felt the growth, and it was painful. But now I look back and say, I absolutely had to go through that to be able to be successful at this point in time in my life.
Awesome. That is excellent. I love that. Well, I hope that's an inspiration, because, it sometimes people think that with titles, it's easy, like a walk on the beach. You use that example.
No, not at all.
Yeah, there's some ocean waves that come in and you have to confront before you get to that side.
Absolutely.
Great to hear. So, Miss Tull, tell us about yourself. I think one of the things when I asked for your bio that Chris sent me was that you receive a lot of money in scholarships. the figure that he called, I won't say it on air. You're going to confirm for me that it was not a typo. So share with us more about yourself and your studies and what you intend to do after.
Yeah, so what Shane is talking about is in 2021, I didn't receive, I was offered over $500,000 in scholarships. The language is important because received kind of implies that I have that. I do not. That was just the amount that was offered to me in culmination of all the scholarships that I
There was
applied for.
multiple scholarships then. Okay.
Yes, I applied for, I think, about 7 locally and a couple internationally. And I received all of them except one. Offered. I was offered all of them except one. Now I'm making my own mistake. But yeah, so my education started in Bermuda. I went to public school for my entire life. And similar to what was just said, somebody saw something in me that I hadn't seen in myself. And they kind of encouraged me to apply to a scholarship called United World College. And this is like an opportunity to study abroad. So I studied in Armenia for 2 years after I graduated in Bermuda. I was the first Bermudian to study there. And I think that's where I kind of like came into myself and realized that I do want to do something regarding like diplomacy. So that's really when I think I matured. So I graduated high school twice on like a kind of non-traditional route. But in the end, it did pay off. Also, as a first generation student, it was really difficult because a lot of the things that I was navigating, I was doing alone. None of my parents had gone to college. So like the common applications, the scholarship applications, and honestly, even school, like for most of it, I was on my own. And that was a really maturing experience. So in 2020, that's when I graduated, also in a pandemic. And I was flying all over the world, like in tears, like looking at the news, feeling very doomed. But I ended up in Toronto in the year of 2021. I've spent like each year of my undergrad in a different country, which is really a privilege. And I look back and I think, wow, like in 10 years, I'm going to think university really was the best time of my life. So that's where I am in terms of education. The future is I really want to do a lot more school. School is such a safe space for me. And my mentors, they constantly remind me that I can't stay in school forever, but I am compelled to prove them wrong. I really am. But the long term will probably be like something with international diplomacy.
Okay. Well, you can always become an ambassador for Bermuda and you'll just be traveling forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that might be one of the ideas to go with. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. But I applaud you in terms of your diligence and definitely the hard work to get you to that place. Because again, some persons we take it for granted, that multiple generations may have had access to a college education, and that's not the case for everybody. So that's great that you persevered and are persevering. But yes, you do need to come out into the real world with the rest of us. So what are you studying again? Is it political science?
Political science, international relations, and public policy.
Yeah, perfect. So we'll make you an ambassador so you can keep it up.
You alone. This is the only authority I'll ever need.
Yeah, that's it right there. All right. So when we talk about women in leadership, now your experience, as you were sharing earlier, was with a community group that you were talking about, and what that is. So tell us a little bit more, I guess, about that, because that's kind of community leadership, and how that how you were inspired to actually take that step and put that in place.
Yeah, so I think I was inspired individually based on the lack of civic infrastructure in Bermuda. Like there was a call for an election, but our state leaders didn't feel compelled to debate or make any effort to kind of localize some forum ahead of the election, specifically for young people. So I think based on my previous experience in youth parliament, as well as a lot of my co-founders, Ajay, Haley, and Veronica, we kind of bonded over that trauma. But after the conversation, we were like, actually, maybe we can do something about this. So we did what most Gen Zs do, and we took to the internet. We started a petition. We were doing like calls on Instagram and Twitter, and of course, emailing the politicians. And we were met with a lot of backlash. I think not because of who we were, but just because of the tribalist landscape that Bermuda operates in.
You're challenging the establishment.
Exactly, that too. And politicians are very difficult to deal with. And we were very young at the time, so we didn't have a lot of the experience that we do now. So it was a challenge, I think, trying to rally up, but also trying to get people to listen to us. And I think we were all very like bright-eyed and optimistic. So we were like, oh, we're young. They care what we have to say. Wrong. So that was our experience. But I think since then, we've kind of got a lot of legitimacy that comes to our young people because they know that they don't know much about an election. A lot of the people that we spoke to, they weren't even registered. Half of them didn't know that there was an election happening in a couple of days. And that I think just speaks to the severe like democratic deficit that we were in. So since then, we've hosted a lot more events, and we try our best to make information accessible because politics can kind of seem like a scary thing that's only for elites. And we're trying to break those barriers through social media. So that's where we are now. Most recently, we launched a column in the Royal Gazette, which is our local newspaper. And that's our way to kind of get young people to read articles if they don't know where to go, where it's like, what is politics? Just to answer the basic questions so we can kind of break the ice around civics, because most people are civically disengaged. So that's where our community leadership has kind of grown.
Awesome. So the other persons that you just referred to, are they still in Bermuda or is everybody off to school?
So most of us are still in school. Two of us just graduated. Veronica graduated from South Advent University in Florida, and Haley just finished at Johns Hopkins University. So two are out, and then Ajay and I are still in school.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's great. And you guys basically have put the infrastructure in place so that things keep going, even from remotely, basically.
That's the plan, exactly. And even after we leave Bermuda Youth Connect, we want to kind of develop some media structure and even some legislation that mandates things like debates for young people. So even if we are like, okay, we're done, it can still move forward. Some kind of successful plan.
All right. And that's a great idea. I'm going to definitely tap into you in terms of a similar situation here where, again, our your young adults are disengaged for various reasons, and they need to be mobilized in that way. In terms of bringing more awareness and education around, civics and politics, and because at the end of the day, it's theirs to receive after, it's damaged or in better shape. Could be one or the other. So that's really important that we make sure that we have that. So we're going to touch on that a little bit more. Omonike, tell me, in terms of partners, how many female partners do we have here in the Virgin Islands?
That's a really good question. So, I'm assuming you're only talking about Walkers, because Walkers is the only law firm in the Virgin Islands. So, on that basis, there are only 2 female partners, and there are four male partners. No, 5 actually. We just got 1. But I have to say that Walkers actually has a really good. Generally, we have a large number of female partners as compared to male partners. I don't know the exact statistics, but it's something that we are we're very intentional about. I mean, I am on Walker's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, the Americas Committee, and we talk about these things. And so these are things that we're always looking at, and we're very determined to make sure that we stay focused not just on females, but also on any category that brings diversity to the partnership bench or to the firm generally. Okay. So I think we're pretty good at that. Unfortunately, I don't know the numbers of partners in the BVI, but I can identify at least 1, 2. There are quite a few female partners in the BVI. Absolutely.
Awesome. And I asked the question because, again, I remember when the announcement was made about you receiving the position, I was like, wait a minute. How many women do we have as partners? Because, again, this is a field and an industry that has been here in the Virgin Islands for 30 years and counting. Yeah. And it's important, again, like you were mentioning, to be intentional about diversity. And in this case, we're talking about based on gender.
Yes.
So that, the balance of perspectives is brought and is something that is intentionally developed and allowed to grow over time. Because go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think that's absolutely right. And, unfortunately, what you find, particularly in the legal fraternity, is that you have a lot of females who start the practice of law. And they are practitioners for a long time. But then at some point in time, oftentimes family takes precedence precedence over their careers. And that's absolutely fine. So sometimes, whilst you may have the best intentions, the individuals themselves may determine that that's not something that they want, whether it is because they decide that they want to put more efforts into having children and raising those children, or being better partners, or not better, I shouldn't say better, sorry, being partners to their husbands, or whomever, sorry. That sometimes influences persons' decisions whether they want to continue to climb that ladder, because it requires sacrifice, and sometimes that's not a sacrifice that some females are willing to make, and I think that's absolutely fine. So there's a balance to be had there, and I think as firms we have a responsibility to ensure that we create a safe space and we don't make that a disadvantage, and we understand that there are other priorities, but that there still is an ability for a female to have a family, support that family, but also become a partner if that is what they want to do. And so I think Workers is doing a great job at doing it, but I think as a general matter, there's a lot more work to be done in the fraternity to ensure that is possible.
That's happening. Okay.
Yes.
And that's an excellent point, because every career has different demands. So, we might have the intent in terms of the goal to go all the way to the top in a particular field, but then your responsibilities change
exactly
as life happens. So
exactly.
Sometimes we have to make those decisions to make a pivot, so to speak.
But we shouldn't have to.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that's where the new, because I'm seeing a lot more of DEI initiatives, the diversity and inclusion in companies and organizations, in terms of trying to say, we need to better support everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
And be able to have the whether it's flexible schedules or actually daycare at work that allow mothers basically to continue to pursue their career goals if that's what's important to them. So that's very key.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. We have to put the systems in place to make it less challenging to achieve successes in your career and have a family.
And have the family. Yeah. And I think that in itself will again attract more women, and then as you pointed out, you'll actually stay longer, because then it's not that they're not entering into the field, but that actually in terms of the longevity, so to speak.
And it wouldn't be a conversation. It shouldn't even be a conversation, and it also shouldn't be a choice. You shouldn't have to think, oh, I'm at this stage in my career. Should I be having children, or should I get married? You shouldn't have to think about that. You should just be able to do both, but unfortunately, not every environment allows
it's a work in
for
progress.
That. It is. But we are making strides, and I think that's the important point. We are making strides, and we're definitely conscious of it in a way that I think we weren't prior. And so once we have that, we now are in a space of consciousness. We are trying to do better for it.
Yeah. And that's the important part, because I think with the awareness and the education, then the decision makers now start to make different decisions.
Exactly. And then you have more females in the decision-making capacity. So that also influences the decisions being made.
Exactly.
The circle.
It is. And that's why sometimes I encourage women, and I say to them, when we're looking at why are there more opportunities for certain things, I remind them sometimes you have to be the trailblazer.
Correct.
So if you don't,
absolutely,
kick down the door and get in there and keep it open for others to come, then, it's either we'll never get there, or we have to wait for the one that's going to come and blaze the trail.
Absolutely.
It always has to start with one. And from there, again, we support one another as women in the initiatives to say, we need to have more of us at the table, regardless of where it is. So you imagine even with places like church organizations that at one point women weren't, considered, I don't know if that's a phrase, leadership material, whatever that means. So it's kind of like, they would not have the same level of respect.
Yes.
As the person does, because of their gender. And that is something where, we really have to continue to raise the bar and push on those doors and say, hey, I'd like to come in. And, stop asking for permission sometimes. We just need to walk in.
Exactly. Just
Exactly.
break down the door and go.
I'm here.
Yeah.
What are
Whether
we up
you like
to?
it or not.
Yeah. And I'm like, what are we up to now? So that is so important, I think. And that's why I get excited with Thierry's her story about them seeing a need and a concern in the community and having that will to actually do something,
Absolutely.
and not just sit and wait for somebody else to do it because you complained about it, but to actually
Mhm.
be the change. See, that's a live example of being the change you desire
I
to see.
want to say, yep.
So
Absolutely.
that's so
Thank
important.
you.
All right, we'll take a quick pause here just to thank our Territories Talk media partners. Again, if you're just tuning in, I'm your co-host, Shaina Smith Archer, and I'm here with two lovely ladies, one from the Virgin Islands, Miss Omonike Robinson-Pickering, and Tierrai Tull from Bermuda. She's currently in the UK, guys. So she's up very late. So we're very blessed to have her here tonight. But again, thank you to all our regional media partners, Cayman Marl Road, our Facebook page, Montserrat, ZJB Radio, Virgin Islands, CBN Radio, Bermuda's Channel 82, Radio Saba, and Barbados CBC Channel 8. And if there are any jurisdictions this has been viewed or listened to in and you didn't hear your media company call, feel free to message us on Facebook and we'll be happy to reach out and have that conversation because we definitely want to get the word out as far and wide as possible. All right. So, ladies, let's talk now about who are the people that inspired you. I think you guys mentioned at least one or two people in your introduction. But when you think about, who really inspired you to where you are and who continue to inspire you or mentor you on your journey, personally, professionally, doesn't matter. That I think you talk about the importance of the support system, in everything because it's like you never can do without that. There's always something
No.
that should be a part of your system. So I guess we'll start with you and then I'll switch out to Miss Hall.
Sure. So, I mean, I've been really, really blessed to have, as I mentioned before, a strong support system, starting with my mother. She is a trailblazer. She is a politician in Trinidad. She was, at the time she became a senator, she was the youngest female senator in Trinidad. I think she was, I don't know how old, let's not talk about how old she was, but she was really young. And she is still in politics. So now she's one of the most seasoned politicians. She had twins at 48. I mean, like what else is there to say? Yeah, she's just doing her own thing, living her own life, and I just love it. My father is also a politician, and he's a politician in the Virgin Islands. So, I mean, he's been in politics almost as long as my mother. And so I first have to say, I look at them, and I grew up with these powerful people, and you have the sense that there's nothing you cannot do. You can do anything, absolutely anything. So starting from there, and then when I mean, obviously you're growing up, you have various people, but when I got to Walkers, I was really, really quite lucky. I've had excellent mentors. I want to talk though about the difference between mentorship and sponsorship, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I've had some amazing mentors, primarily a gentleman called David Collins from the Cayman Islands. When I went to Singapore, he, that's when I talked about somebody seeing something in me that I didn't see. He essentially just handpicked me and said, "Look, chick, you're going to do this." And I was just like, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "Yeah, you are. You can." And he continued to just be with me throughout my career. When I went back to the BVI, he stuck with me. Went to Cayman, he stuck with me. Then he moved to the BVI, he stuck with me. And he was the one who finally just said to me, "All right, you're ready now." And I'm like, no, they're not ready. And he's like, "Yeah, you're ready." And I'm like, no. But you had that support. Patrick Orman, Matthew Coleman, who is our current managing partner in the BVI office. I mean, I would not have been here without him. So what I find interesting about my experience is that I've actually had a lot of, David is Black, but Matthew, Patrick, they are white males, and they have been my mentors. So that's something that I want to say that is really important. Sometimes I think that Black females think, oh, you could only have sponsorship or mentorship from other Black females. No, it shouldn't matter. And having those perspectives from people who are not from your background can be so influential and so very important.
Mhm.
And so I come to talking about sponsorship. You can have a mentor, but you also have someone who is in the room that you are not in, who is pushing for you, who is saying, listen, this person, we need to support her. We need to push her. We need to do the things that are necessary to get her to where she needs to be. Because without that, you could have a mentor telling you, do this, blah, 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 blah. And you call them when you're having a hard time. But then if they're not actually a sponsor, when you're not able to fend for yourself, you only get as far as you're able to do on your own. So there's a distinction, but it's an important distinction, but both are so very important. And now that I have been able to get to partnership, it is very important to me to pay that forward. So I try my best, and it is probably one of the things that I enjoy the most about my job, the mentorship aspect of the associates, showing them the ropes, telling them, hey, what are you doing? Don't do that, and just bringing them up, as well as being able, when that time comes, to be a sponsor for them, and to say to them, okay, this is what I think, this is where I think you are in your career, and this is where I think you can go, and make those representations to the people who have the decision-making capacities. So yeah, and of course, God, of course, and I don't say that flippantly, but that to me and underpins everything. So, we talked about people, but I couldn't get to where I am without having that relationship, and a solid relationship with that, to be able to call on him, and that strength, and that reserve, because sometimes your own strength is insufficient. Most times your own strength is insufficient, and you have to call on that as well. So I feel really blessed. I would not be here without mentors, sponsors, support system. It's a whole pot that's got me to where I am. And it's just that part that will continue to push me forward, and drive me to the next level. Oh, sorry. And I just have to say my friends, yeah, but they have too many of them. And some of them listening. So if I start calling names, they'll be like, well, you didn't call my name.
No, don't. Be like the whole crew?
Say, all my friends, the whole crew, all of you from Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad, wherever else, you're all here.
All part of it, yeah. And that's so key, because it's almost as if that's like the kind of like the web. So if you ever have to fall, that's the one that catch you. So it's so key. And I always encourage young persons. There are those ride or dies that are gonna be with you for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And then there are those friends that come in for a season.
Yeah.
And again, you cherish those relationships because they're there for a reason, like literally. And it might be too, again, like you're saying, enable you to get to that next level.
Correct. Absolutely.
And with that, that's where you keep progressing as a person, both professionally and personally. So that's really key. Absolutely. All right, Ms. Tull, let's share with us what's happening on your end. So you said you have some mentors that are telling you, you have to come out into the real world at some point.
Yeah. I don't know if they'll get a mention though. I'm kidding. No, I think I've had a different experience. Like, teachers have been my support system because my parents weren't able to offer help in terms of like college resources. So teachers, specifically my law teacher at my high school, really pushed me to apply for the UWC scholarship. She pushed me to apply for scholarships in general. She actually flew with me to Armenia. She packed up her and her husband, and they flew across the world to Armenia to take me to school. But I think in one of my recent articles, I wrote a tribute to a lot of the women in Bermuda who I felt uplift and mentor people just with their presence. Like, somebody doesn't have to have a close relationship to you for you to learn from them. And that's something that I've always kind of taken as I went throughout my high school experience. But I am really lucky to have 3 mentors. My law teacher, who took me to Armenia, we still talk. She survived the trip. And also Kathy Duffy. She's the CEO of AIG Bermuda. And we have a really similar upbringing. Like, I think we're spiritually connected. She's someone that I go to for career advice, honestly, personal advice when I want to stop or when I feel sad. Like, she's somebody who I can really talk to on a corporate and personal level. And I think that is really rare. And she tells me to, like, mentorship, it's mutual. Like, she tells me that she learns from me and I learn from her. I don't know if I believe her, but that's what she says. And then my last mentor is also somebody who sat on one of my scholarship boards. He's also a white man, Kevin Dallas. he really advocated for me when he had little information about me, and it was something of like I just knew. It was a gut feeling, and since then we keep in contact. So I've had three main mentors throughout my life, but I've always been touched by educators, honestly, like people in the church and like distant family who even just send like really sweet messages like to Bermuda Youth Connect, or send me emails and say, hey, I saw you in the news today, keep doing what you're doing. That really helps when things get a little dark in college. So I think mentorship is all around, but sponsorship for me has definitely come from Kevin and Kathy in Bermuda.
That's awesome. That's amazing. The teacher packed her up. So even with that trip, like, what was your family's response when that became available, the opportunity came up? Were they saying to go, or were they saying, that's too far away from Bermuda?
Well, I think everyone said, what are you doing? Because I think there's very limited information about Armenia beyond, I don't know, the Kardashians. So exactly. So everyone had this distorted perception of what Armenia was. And honestly, me too. I don't know why I chose it. I had options of like India, China, Canada, Hong Kong, and Armenia. And I felt like the rest of them were touristy destinations. So for me, that was me being like adventurous and honestly just trying to like go far away and hide from the world. But it turned out pretty well. I think the response was, you're going to be in danger. And to some extent, that's a valid concern. But I was safe. And I think they coming with me, like them coming with me to Armenia, was their way of saying, okay, let's make sure she really is safe.
Make sure you're safe.
This is it. Let's make sure you really are safe. But they were initially hesitant, but over time they were like, okay, if this is what you want to do, then do it.
Okay. Yeah, because it's kind of like, okay, it's not the US, it's not the UK, it's not Canada. Usual suspects, nothing in Europe. And it's kind of like you've gone to Europe, but then it's like, yeah, like you said, a place that people don't know much about. And
super close to Russia.
Yes, this hesitation. That's awesome though. But I applaud you in terms of, again, even to encourage in making such a major life change like that, to pursue your goals. So that's something that I hope again inspires some young lady, watching this, whether tonight or afterwards, and thinking about, going out and exploring the world and figuring, if she did it, I can do it too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's it. So key. All right. So when we talk about gender equity and equality, I think sometimes even us as women don't think in those terms. And I liked what Omonike talked about in terms of the intentionality that's happening within your organization. And I think now as a society, it's something that, again, we have to know as a collective start to come around and understand the terms, because a lot of times these things pop up once a year during an awareness month. And, you have a few speeches and some initiatives and then it kind of dies down. But that to me is not then making the traction that needs to happen in terms of, okay, if we want to see more women in any type of leadership role, we need to understand the importance and the value of that. It's not just to have it for having its sake, but that there's an expected outcome. What is expected to change when that happens. So in your experiences and in your own spheres, what do you guys think needs to happen in terms of that, in terms of how we move the ball down the court when it comes to more, or I should say, improved gender equality? Because as we said before, some strides are being made compared to a generation ago, and but there's still a lot more work to be done.
Absolutely.
Because the status quo and the establishment, they never give up too easily. So we gotta keep pushing it. So Tierrai, talk to us about, again, you talked a little bit about this. I guess, I don't know. I might be interpreting it wrong, but you were saying that when you guys started this community activist group, that you got a very negative response.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that might have been because you all were young women?
I'm sure. I'm
part of it.
Absolutely sure. Yeah. I think in Bermudian culture, like, it's very sexist, absolutely sexist, and that was confirmed. Like, you have these instincts about what society is, but until it's externally validated, or until somebody says, "Oh, I felt that too," you're kind of doubting yourself, or you're gaslighting yourself. But I'm 100% sure that it was because of like who we were, like our age, and obviously our gender, because like also we just popped out of nowhere. So that could have added to it as well. But I think generally people take women less serious than men.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about like addressing gender equity, I think the first thing is we have to reframe the issue. Like, I think we misdiagnose the problem. It's not that women are not leaders, it's that they're not being sponsored for the leaders that they are. There have been like multiple studies from like Forbes and the CDC that show like effective qualities of leadership are mostly found in women. So I think the question then becomes, why is there a gap in women leadership then? Another thing that I think happens is we overestimate how much progress we've actually made. Yes, there's a conversation happening, but what are these women's experience like in the workplace if they get to these places of leadership? Are they taken seriously? Is there a pathway to a C-suite, to further leadership? I think those are the questions that we need to be asking because women are leaders in the community. But when I reflect on BYC's experience, I think we have gotten a huge level of legitimacy that I don't think we would have needed had we been male or been associated with one. And I think that's why it happened, because we were looking for men to kind of balance it out. But the universe, the God, the powers that be said, no, you need to be women. All of you need to be women. And in retrospect, it all makes sense.
So have men joined the Connect since then?
No, we actually aren't looking. But in the future, we will be once we expand to like media and the long-term succession plan. But until we get to that point, we're quite comfortable.
Okay, so you're holding on to the core. That's good.
Yeah, we are.
All right. Dominique, share with us in terms of, again, whether it's women in leadership in your field or, when you look across the community, you talked about your mom's experience as the youngest, and I'm sure there were probably only a handful of women in the caucus in the parliament at the time, because regionally where there's a lot of stigma again because of we're a patriarchal society.
Mm-hmm.
Women's place is not outside the kitchen for some people. So even now, so what's your take on it in terms of where we are?
Yeah, I think we do have to give ourselves a bit of credit. We've really come a long way. I mean, even if I just look at my mother's progression, when she was there, she was one of a handful. You're absolutely right. And now there's so many women, it's still not equal or surpass the number of men, but it's a lot more. So that says to me that we are making progress and that the change is happening. Mm-hmm. I also think even as I mentioned earlier, in the legal fraternity, not only are more women practicing, because I think, let's say 50 years ago, 100 years ago, very few women were practicing law. And now you have so many women coming into the profession. And as I mentioned earlier, staying and sticking with the profession. So I think you're seeing it happen. I think one of the things we have to be mindful of as well is that, there are two sides to the coin. So there's the side of, okay, yes, we have to make the space for the women and for us as women to get there. But then women also have to want to get there. And sometimes we choose not to for whatever reason. So there's that. So I actually feel as though the opportunities are becoming more and more available. And it is whether we choose to step up and take those opportunities. I may have had a unusual, I hope my experience wasn't unusual, but I haven't felt like being a woman was a hindrance to my career progression. I've never felt it personally. I have had other, not at Walker's, but at other places say that or suggest that. Yeah. But that's just not been my experience. So sometimes it is actually difficult for me to speak to it because I don't see it. Mm-hmm. But it's not that I don't think that it's there. I know that it's there. Mm-hmm. But I feel as though, we can get there. It is happening more and more. I see it happening, not just in the legal sphere, but also in the political arena. And Shaina, you would be aware of that as well. I'm sure that, during your time as a politician, you have seen more and more females put themselves forward for candidacy and be elected. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to the day where it's no longer this is the first female anything, because we would have done it all already, and so it's just
Yeah.
now normal and commonplace for a female to be
To
the head
be
of what, or the owner of X and the partner of Y, and I want that to be just pretty standard. And I think we're getting there.
yeah, we're getting more permission slips.
Absolutely,
I like
absolutely.
that. I like
Yeah.
that.
Because
Sorry, and
sometimes- go ahead.
Sorry, one thing I should add though is that for those of us who are there, or who have been able to break that glass ceiling, we also have to make provisions for others to come behind
Very
us.
true.
We have to be able to say, okay, if someone calls and says, how did you do it? We have to be willing to share that information, and to not only share, but also assist in
Yes.
them doing it as much as we possibly can. So that is also just as important. It makes no sense us getting there and then just saying, "Oh well, too bad for you. I got here, so
You gotta work
I just want to be by myself." No. That's
Yeah.
not how this works.
And
So I think,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's sisterhood, because I think too,
Yes.
that's one of the reasons why I also wanted to do the show, to show the importance of the sisterhood or the sorority, because what we don't understand is oftentimes we are bringing up against the fraternity,
Yes.
because
Yes.
they don't have to know each other, but they go
No.
one
Yeah.
head on a particular thing,
That's very true.
because it's the boys. So it's important for us as women now again to understand. Again, I don't need to know you, but if you come to me and you say XYZ is the case, and I can assist, I
will.
willingly, hold my hand out and say I can show you what I do know, and
Exactly.
from there you take care, you take it the rest of the way.
Yeah,
And
and that's why programs such as this are so important, because we need to create these spaces. So I may not have the opportunity to directly speak to someone in Bermuda or someone in Guyana, but these types of programs are important because they allow the dissemination of information. They allow a space for us to demonstrate these women have made it. And then hopefully, if someone is so inspired, they know who to reach out to, so they can say, all right, well, I saw Omonike on this Woman in Leadership show, and I really want to talk to her and get more information. But then when that happens, we have to be open enough and willing to share that information with whomever,
reaches
puts
out.
themselves out there to reach out.
It feels really good to hear you both say that, because I think as young women, we're like kind of scared to put ourselves out
Don't be
there. I
scared.
think there's a fear of rejection, right? Like, because when
Yes.
the world tells you you shouldn't be another way, you kind of internalize that. So it feels really good to hear you say you'll answer any request.
Oh, absolutely. But I think that, as I mentioned earlier, that's part of it, part of the mentorship, part of the support, part of the bringing people up with you. There's no sense in being here and just being here by yourself. That makes no sense. I have another girlfriend. She's a partner in one of the other offshore law firms. And this is something we talk about a lot, when I got to partnership before her, but then I was the one who said to her, all right, come on, it's time, right? And, she'd be like, no, I don't want to do it. I'm not ready. And I'm like, listen, there's absolutely no reason. Everything you're telling me is foolishness. Come on, do it. And now she's done it. She still quarrels with me and said, I can't believe you got me into this. And I said, yeah, I know you don't like that I got you into it, but I know you really are loving that I got you into it.
Yeah.
So because before that, what we saw was not necessarily people that looked like us being partners. And so we have to support each other. We really do. I think that's a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah. And it's like it's a part of a bigger cause, because again, I know for me, one of the reasons why I always, extend myself for mentorship is that when I was coming up, I didn't have many persons I could turn to.
Exactly.
So similar to what you talked about, Tierrai, where people basically became your role model from a distance.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I might now start to pinpoint persons and say, hey, what's her story? And start to learn more about that person. And because I can't necessarily have that engagement, I do though start to model basically what I see them doing, because that has shown itself to be successful. But, I know the struggle now in terms of, like you're saying, you don't have anybody to necessarily call up and say, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Or how would you advise me to go up forward? and that's being so important. So, even if it's just once a month, I tell them, call me and we'll
Yeah.
have a chat. You tell me what you've been up to, what you're doing, any questions about anything, and that goes a long way,
Yeah.
because it's like, coaches and mentors are some of the key people. I think, again, it's part of the new paradigm that we're in, because before, nobody thought about life coaching or needing to have
Yeah.
an executive coach, but it's something now where that third party, so to speak, where their voice now helps to guide a lot of things that you didn't have access to before, and
Mhm.
having that. So, that's always key, I think, for us at all any age and stage of our lives, that you always have somebody that's pulling you forward and you're reaching back and bringing
Yes.
somebody along,
Yes.
because that's
Absolutely.
really what is going to develop this and change the whole dynamic, that gender would stop being a question anymore in terms of, do we have enough?
Mhm.
you but that we've landed them from Pluto all the way to Mercury, and it's covered. And our young women don't have to question, whether or not they can do something
Right.
Mhm.
based on people's perception, but they know that, somebody's already entered that room long before you. So, you're more than welcome at this point, and go in there and do your best, because I think sometimes that's one of the things we take for granted, because, again, people may not know you, but they're gonna judge you.
Oh, yes.
So if they have a negative experience and then they turn and blame it on, oh, it's women, they get so emotional and you have all this trauma. I'm sometimes like,
Yeah. What's up with that?
men have more drama than us. They'll stop.
Exactly.
So, but again, they judge you. So sometimes, though, as I progress, I've had to learn this, and I'm like, really? I say, okay, yeah, you really are holding a banner up, sometimes without having to intentionally do it. So as a result, it's like you just come out, game on, and make it happen, because it could impact you coming behind on me later on, and they're saying, Shaina was here and she was just terrible. So,
We don't want another woman.
you know,
Yeah.
How about we just don't want Shaina? I mean,
yeah, they know
That's an
they know
incredible
personally.
burden
Yeah,
to represent an entire gender, just
yes,
one person.
because
It's
of
the same
one
thing with race.
experience.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's the same journey we've had to take or seen played out when it came to race.
Yep.
Mhm.
Because it's like, then it's like, you're the first person in there in certain things because of your race, and it's like you're scrutinized more heavily for a period of time. So there's always going to be that season of proving, and then eventually it's like, okay, this is legit. We can trust it.
Yeah.
So we're still in, I think, that transition, and making progress. I do think we're making progress. I agree with you guys, but it's for us, again, to continue to tell our stories and put the information out there. I just want to send a quick shout out. You guys were mentioning Guyana. We actually have somebody on here from Guyana. Um, Barbados, good night. Good to have you guys here. Emily DeCou, she's actually one of our past guests for Women in Leadership from the Cayman Islands. Thank you. Robin Ford, watching from Guyana. Robin, I know you're supposed to be in Barbados, but anyway, you're on a trip. Shirley Osborne, this is one of my favorite feminist friends from Montserrat. I think she was on, no, she was actually on talking about decolonization. So great to have you on with us tonight, guys. And as I said, Omni, the hour is going to go very fast.
Mhm.
It's
I
done.
noticed.
Yeah. So we're gonna just switch out now. In terms of closing words to encourage our young women, I'm gonna leave you guys give some parting words, and then I'll wrap up.
Yeah, I think what I want to say is don't be afraid to reach out. We talked about identifying women that we feel have made strides in certain areas. And I mean, whilst all of them may not be accessible, so like I'd love to talk to Oprah, but I mean, I don't think she's
Me
going to
too.
respond to
Me
my
too.
message, so, but if there's someone in your community or in your sphere, at your school, something like that, feel free to reach out. Yes, you may not get a response, but you may. And if you got a response, you would be enriched for it. So reach out. I am putting myself out there. If anybody wants to talk to me after, drop me a line. I'm on Facebook. I'd be really happy to have a conversation. And that's what I want to leave with everyone. Mentorship, sponsorship, connection, create the relationships, seek out those relationships with people who can take you to the next level. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I just say learn to fail smart. I think a lot of the lessons that I've learned in life have come from failures. And as women, we're scrutinized from the public, from ourselves. So invest in yourself and learn to fail smart, because that's what life is, like a series, it's a journey. But as long as you pick yourself up and keep going, you will be okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I just also want to say thank you to Shaina for having me on the show. I really appreciate the opportunity. I enjoy doing these types of things, and I think
Awesome.
I'm really grateful that you considered me to do it. So thank you very much.
And thank you for accepting. Somebody said they just caught the end. Oh, wow. Okay, so it'll be uploaded in a few. Thinking go back and watch, but thank you for tuning in. But yeah, ladies, I do appreciate you taking the time out tonight because again, like you've expressed, you guys are very passionate about, the whole notion of us highlighting our women and sharing our knowledge and insight because again, keeping it to ourselves is not helping. It's not helpful, I would say, to our community development. And that's the key thing that we always have to remember that, you're not blessed to keep it to yourself. You're blessed to be a blessing. So we always want to put that positive energy out there and be there with us. And again, thank you to all our media partners for taking this around the region. And anyone else that would love to be a part of this as a media partner, feel free to send us an inbox message on Facebook and we will be sure to pick that up. Oh, we have somebody from Trinidad.
That's my high school friend. Hi, Cami. When I talk about the support system, you have to have the support system. So.
Hey, well, she showed up for you, buddy.
She did.
She showed up. That is awesome. So if you haven't liked our Facebook page yet, please go on Territories Talk as well as subscribe to the YouTube channel. So whenever we have any episodes coming up, they will automatically come up once the post has been generated. And we are here every second and fourth Wednesday, 7:30 Atlantic Standard Time. Various topics. I mean, if this is really your first time tuning in, you do want to catch the rest. And again, on our Facebook and our social YouTube channel, you'll find all the past episodes. So you can go on and look at some of the very interesting conversations that we have been having over the last year. It was actually last year was 1 year. And speaking of just, seeing a need for something and connecting with people.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my show here locally and I reached out to Chris because he did a presentation at some type of workshop I was to here locally via Zoom. And I reached out to him. I was like, I remember you doing something here a few years back called Territories Talk. Is that something that still exists? And I think it's needed. We need to start to have these cross-border conversations. And boom,
Here we are.
A year ago, basically we were like, let's figure this thing out. And we started up. And, everyone that we've talked to has always been, more than willing to come on and again share their knowledge and insight with our audience. And those persons that may go on afterwards, they have questions, they always reach out. So it's I feel so privileged to do this, guys. Trust me when I tell you, because it's something that oftentimes we see other people doing it and we take it for granted, but we understand now the importance of having forums like this. So this is something where we want to take to a completely next level in the next year. And probably have in-person conversations as well as, with us summits or conferences on the different topics that are affecting all of us regionally and that we need to address. So on that note, I would say on behalf of my co-host, Eden sent his apologies as well as Chris. So just in case anybody wondered what happened, they fared the hurricanes very well, actually. So because Eden, they just... Ian passed through there, and then the one Fiona, I think it was, that went out to Bermuda. So everyone is doing well. So they should all be back here with me on our next episode. And until then, asking everybody to be safe because we know we're still in hurricane season and be prepared. Okay. So have a good evening.